In the heart of Bemba land, near the cascading Chishimba Falls and surrounded by the tall grasses of Kasama, there was a village steeped in tradition and ruled by a powerful king. King Chanda was feared and respected, a man who held tightly to his power and expected obedience without question. His rule was as unyielding as the rocks by the Lum River, and the people of Bemba land knew better than to cross him. But even the hardest of kings has a soft spot, and for King Chanda, that was his daughter, Mwansa. Mwansa was his pride, his only child, and he treasured her like gold. She was a striking young woman, known not only for her beauty, but also for the kindness and curiosity in her heart. Yet her life was bound by the palace walls. As the daughter of the king, she was expected to stay sheltered, her life dedicated to royal duties and high-born traditions. Mwansa, however, yearned for more. She wanted to experience the world beyond the palace gates, to know the people of her land and hear their stories, to learn about life as it unfolded beyond the protective gaze of her father. One warm afternoon, Mwansa gathered her courage, wrapped herself in a simple chitenge cloth, and disguised herself to slip out into the bustling market square of the village. The square was alive with colors, sounds, and laughter. People bartered for goods. Children chased each other between the stalls, and the smell of roasting maize filled the air. It was here that Mwansa first saw him, a young man named Lam. Lam was known throughout the village for his gentle heart and his knack for storytelling. Though he was poor, working the fields each day to feed his family, he had a spirit that shone bright. He spent his spare moments by the village well, playing his drum and sharing stories with the villagers, tales that painted pictures of distant lands and ancient ancestors. Mwansa watched from the edge of the crowd, captivated by his voice and his laughter. She had never met someone who could hold a crowd like that, who could make people forget their worries with nothing but words and rhythm. Lam noticed her watching, and their eyes met. For a moment, they held each other's gaze, and in that instant, a connection sparked between them. Over the weeks that followed, Mwansa returned to the village each morning, slipping out of the palace to meet Lam by the well. They would talk for hours under the shade of an old baobab tree, sharing their dreams and stories. Mwansa would listen to Lam's tales of the ancestors and the spirits of the land, while Lam marveled at her gentle wisdom and wondered how such a kind heart could come from a palace ruled by a king like Chanda. Their bond grew into love, a love they both knew was forbidden. Mwansa was a princess, and her father, King Chanda, would never allow her to be with a poor villager. But they were undeterred, finding joy in each stolen moment, knowing their love was as fragile as a butterfly's wings, but as enduring as the sun over Bemba land. But secrets cannot be kept forever. Word of Mwansa's visits to the village reached the ears of the king's guards, who whispered it to the king. King Chanda's face turned as dark as a gathering storm when he heard of his daughter's forbidden romance. He called Mwansa to him, demanding to know if the rumors were true. His voice was thunderous, his anger unmistakable, but Mwansa did not lie. She held her head high and told him that she loved Lam, a poor man with nothing to offer but his heart and his stories. King Chanda was furious. To him, this love was an insult to his power, a taint on his legacy. He sent for Lam, who was brought before him in chains. In the grand throne room, under the watchful eyes of the king's advisers, Lam knelt before the king. "You dare come before me, after stealing the heart of my daughters?" King Chanda's voice was cold, as harsh as the dry season sun. "You, a man with no wealth, no title, no status?" Lam looked up at the king, his gaze steady. "My king," he replied calmly, "I may have nothing of value, but I have a heart that is true, and it belongs to Mwansa if she will have it." His words did not soften the king's anger, but they reached Mwansa, who could not bear to see the man she loved treated so cruelly. She stepped forward, placing herself between Lam and her father. "Father," she pleaded, "if you love me, let my heart be free. If this love is unworthy of your kingdom, then what worth does your kingdom hold?" The king's advisers gasped at her defiance, but Mwansa stood firm, her eyes brimming with tears but her voice steady. She knew she could not marry a prince or live a life of riches if it meant losing her love. Her father was silent for a long moment, his face etched with hurt and anger, but also with a trace of sadness. He loved his daughter more than his pride, more than his power. And seeing her willing to give up everything for this poor man made him realize that perhaps he had been holding on too tightly. After a heavy silence, the king let out a long, weary sigh. "If this man is truly worthy of you, then let it be known that he shall be accepted among us." Though the words were gruff, they were enough for Mwansa and Lam. And so, under the branches of the old baobab, Lam and Mwansa were married, surrounded by the villagers and the spirits of their ancestors. Though they lived simply, they were happy. They continued sharing stories, building a family, and even King Chanda, over time, found peace in their love. He would visit them in the village, drawn by the laughter and life that their love had brought to his daughter. And to this day, the people of Bemba land tell the story of the king's daughter and the dreamer. It is a story of love, of defiance, and of a heart willing to give up a kingdom for the promise of true happiness, whispered by the firesides and carried by the winds through the valleys and plains of Kasama, where the baobab trees still stand. Look out for part 2 of this story. Remember to hit like and subscribe. Love for all.